I flew back to Connecticut because Mom said it was important. The moment I walked into that dining room in Greenwich, I knew I'd made a mistake. The table was set like she was hosting royalty, crystal glasses catching light from the chandelier, rosemary chicken that probably cost more than my rent. My older sister Rachel sat there in her navy dress, hospital ID still clipped to her purse like she wanted everyone to remember what she did for a living. I slid into my seat across from her, tugging at my borrowed blazer. The fabric felt wrong against my skin. Everything felt wrong. Mom called it a family milestone dinner. I figured it was about Rachel's promotion at that Boston hospital. Should have known better. We made it halfway through dessert before Mom stood up and tapped her glass with a fork. The sound cut through every conversation at once. Everyone went quiet. She had this smile on her face, the one she saves for when she wants people watching. I just want to say, she started, looking around the table slowly, that I am so proud to have 2 daughters. My chest tightened. Maybe this time would be different. One, she put her hand on Rachel's shoulder, is a renowned doctor, saving lives every single day. Then her eyes locked onto mine. And the other is basically a beggar. The room stopped breathing. A couple of relatives laughed nervously. They thought she was joking. She wasn't. Mom tilted her head, watching my face like she was waiting for something to break. Still drifting from job to job, she continued, voice sweet as poison. No real career. No accomplishments to speak of. Just, getting by. My ears started ringing. I was 12 years old again, standing in our New Jersey kitchen while she held up Rachel's perfect report card next to mine. I smiled anyway. Kept my hands folded in my lap. That's what she wanted, to see me crack in front of everyone. What nobody at that table knew was that I hadn't been drifting. For 3 years, I'd been living quietly in Brooklyn, keeping my head down, building something Mom would never understand because it didn't come with a title she could brag about at her country club. I left before coffee. Mom didn't try to stop me. Rachel didn't even look up from her phone. Outside, the Connecticut air bit at my face. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Unknown number, they still don't know, do they? I stared at the message for a long moment, then slipped my phone away without answering. 2 weeks later, Mom announced another dinner. This one in Newport, Rhode Island. She said it was about celebrating family legacy. That's when I knew she was planning something bigger than humiliation. Growing up, there were always 2 versions of success in our house. There was Rachel's version, straight as, medical school, the kind of daughter Mom could mention at dinner parties. Then there was me, the one who asked too many questions and wanted to study computer science instead of something respectable. I remember being 16, showing Mom my acceptance letter to a tech program in New York. She put it down on the kitchen counter without reading past the first line. Rachel got into Johns Hopkins, she said. Pre-med. That was it. That was the whole conversation. By the time I graduated college, the message was clear: follow the path Mom approved, or fund it yourself. So I did. I moved to Brooklyn with 2 suitcases and a laptop, found a tiny apartment in a building that smelled like old cooking oil and regret. Those first 2 years were brutal. I ate ramen more nights than I care to admit. Learned to code in coffee shops because my apartment was too cold to think straight. Started building software solutions for small logistics companies who couldn't afford the big firms. Then I met Marcus, another developer who'd been sleeping on his cousin's couch in Queens. We started talking about what we could build together. Real solutions for real problems. No venture capital, no flashy office, just good work that solved actual issues. Mitchell Solutions started in my kitchen. Marcus handled back-end architecture while I focused on client relations and interface design. We landed our first contract with a shipping company in New Jersey. Then another in Pennsylvania. Then California came calling. 3 years in, we had clients in 5 states and revenue that would have made Mom's friends jealous, if they knew. But here's the thing about being the disappointment: nobody asks questions. Nobody checks in. They just assume you're still struggling because that fits the story better. Rachel certainly didn't ask questions when she called me that summer, 3 years ago. She was buying property in Virginia, some investment thing her husband was excited about. She needed someone to hold funds temporarily while the deal closed. Something about tax timing. I didn't understand all of it. She transferred $75,000 to my account. Just for a few weeks, she said. I'll let you know when I need it back. She never asked. Not once in 3 years. And I'd been putting that money to work ever since. The estate Mom rented in Rhode Island wasn't just big, it was the kind of place that made a statement. Marble floors, ocean views, staff in actual uniforms bringing drinks on silver trays. I arrived exactly on time. Not early enough to seem eager, not late enough to give her ammunition. The first thing I noticed was the crowd. Our family isn't small, but this was different. Aunts and uncles I expected. Cousins from Illinois and Maryland, fine. But there were at least a dozen people I'd never seen before, all wearing expensive suits and carrying leather portfolios. I caught my Uncle Frank's eye across the room. He gave me a look I couldn't quite read, somewhere between sympathy and warning. Rachel held court near the fireplace, talking to a silver-haired man in a charcoal suit. When she saw me, her smile got tighter. She whispered something to the man. He glanced my way, then nodded. Mom swept into the center of the room like she owned it. Knowing her, she probably wished she did. Thank you all for coming, she announced, voice projecting perfectly. I know some of you traveled far, but this couldn't wait. We're here to discuss something vital, the future of our family's assets and legacy. My stomach dropped. She wasn't just showing off anymore. This was about money. Real money. One of the suit-wearing strangers stepped forward. Turned out he was an estate attorney from Providence. He started talking about trusts, inheritance structures, distribution of assets. The kind of language that sounds boring until you realize it's about who gets what when someone dies. Mom wasn't dying. She was restructuring everything while she could still control it. Rachel sat up straighter, hands folded neatly. She'd probably known about this for weeks. The lawyer talked about contributions to family stability and demonstrated financial responsibility. Every phrase felt aimed at someone specific. Finally, Mom's eyes found me in the back of the room. Now, about the distribution, she said, voice dripping with false concern. We've had to make some difficult decisions. She paused. Everyone turned to look at me. Since certain family members have struggled financially, she said it like I had a disease, we've decided it wouldn't be fair to burden them with complex financial expectations or responsibilities. Translation: I was being ridden out. Rachel's face stayed perfectly neutral, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Not quite a smile. Close enough. The lawyer pulled out a document, started reading provisions. I stopped listening after the third clause that excluded me by name. That's when Uncle Frank stood up. Excuse me, he said, voice cutting through the legal jargon. But I think there's something we need to address first. The room went silent when Uncle Frank spoke. He wasn't the type to interrupt. 20 years as an accountant had taught him to stay quiet and count other people's money. But he wasn't looking at Mom. He was looking at me. Mrs. Mitchell, the estate lawyer said carefully, we're in the middle of. I understand, Uncle Frank cut him off. But before you finalize anything, there's been a development. Mom's jaw tightened. Frank, this really isn't a development that affects the entire premise of this meeting. The estate lawyer glanced between them, then at his papers, clearly confused. Rachel leaned forward in her seat, eyes narrowed. Uncle Frank nodded at me. Go ahead. Every person in that room turned to stare. I stood slowly, feeling my heart slam against my ribs. This was it. No going back after this. I think, I said, voice steadier than I felt, we need to talk about Mitchell Solutions. Dead silence. Mom blinked. Mitchell what? Mitchell Solutions. I pulled out my phone, pulled up our company website, and handed it to the estate lawyer. It's a logistics software company. I co-founded it 4 years ago. The lawyer's eyes widened as he scrolled. We started in Brooklyn, I continued, working with small shipping companies that couldn't afford enterprise-level solutions. Then we expanded into warehousing optimization. Last year we opened offices in California and Washington State. Rachel's face had gone pale. That's not. 3 months ago, I kept going, we finalized a partnership with a national distributor based in Colorado. They're integrating our software into their entire supply chain network. Mom found her voice. This is absurd. You live in a tiny apartment. You can barely. The apartment is temporary. I looked directly at her. I've been keeping overhead low while we reinvest profits into growth. The estate lawyer was still scrolling through the website, his expression shifting from confusion to something like shock. He pulled out his own phone, typing quickly. Ms. Mitchell, he said slowly, according to the corporate filings available publicly, you're listed as majority shareholder. Whispers erupted around the room. Rachel stood up. That's impossible. She didn't have startup capital. The lawyer set down both phones and looked at me. Did you? This was the moment. The one I'd been building toward for 3 years. I did, I said quietly. Thanks to Rachel, actually. My sister's face went from pale to gray. What are you talking about? Mom demanded. The estate lawyer was already pulling documents from his portfolio, ones Uncle Frank must have provided earlier. He slid a manila folder across the coffee table. Not toward Mom. Toward Rachel. Dr. Mitchell, he said, voice professionally neutral, 3 years ago, $75,000 was transferred from an account in your name into your sister's personal banking account. According to these records, those funds were used as seed capital for Mitchell Solutions. Rachel grabbed the folder with shaking hands. I watched her face as she opened it and saw the bank statements, the transfer confirmations, the incorporation documents dated 2 weeks after her money hit my account. You, she whispered, you stole from me. The word stole hung in the air like smoke. I didn't flinch. Didn't raise my voice. Just reached into my bag and pulled out my own folder, thicker than the lawyer's, organized with color-coded tabs. I didn't steal anything, I said. You asked me to hold it. Rachel's hands trembled as she clutched the documents. That was temporary. You were supposed to give it back. When? I opened my folder to the first tab, text messages. You never asked for it back. Not once. I handed my phone to the estate lawyer. He read aloud, voice flat and professional. Rachel Mitchell, June 14th, 3 years ago. Hey, can you do me a huge favor? Need someone to hold funds while the Virginia deal closes. Just for a few weeks until Dave sorts the tax stuff. He scrolled down. Your response, sure, how much? Her response, $75K. I'll send the wire tomorrow. You're a lifesaver. Mom stepped closer, trying to see the screen. That doesn't mean. There's more, I said. The lawyer kept reading. June 30th, you texted her, hey, do you still need that money back? Just want to make sure I keep it accessible. Her response, no rush, Virginia thing is dragging. Might be a few months. Just keep it safe. Rachel's face had shifted from gray to red. You manipulated. August 12th, the lawyer continued, you texted again, Rach, been 3 months. Want me to return the funds? No response. September 20th, still holding that 75 for you. Let me know when you need it. I pulled out another document. Then I sent a certified letter to your Boston address. Return receipt requested. You signed for it. The lawyer examined the green postal receipt card clipped to the letter. October 3rd, 3 years ago. Confirmed delivery. What did the letter say? Uncle Frank asked, though I suspected he already knew. I handed him a copy. He read it out loud. Rachel, I've been holding your $75,000 for 4 months. Since you haven't needed it back and haven't responded to my messages, I'm writing to formally inform you that I'd like to invest these funds in a business venture. If you need the money returned, please respond within 30 days. Otherwise, I'll assume you're comfortable with me putting it to work. The room was so quiet I could hear the ocean outside. She never responded, Uncle Frank said. No, I confirmed. 30 days passed. Then 60. Then 6 months. I sent 2 more letters. Certified mail, both signed for. No response. Rachel's lawyer voice finally kicked in. That doesn't constitute legal transfer of ownership. Actually, the estate lawyer interrupted, given the documented communication attempts, the formal written notice, the extended time period, and the lack of any response or objection, this would likely be considered an implied gift or, at minimum, authorization to use the funds. He looked at Rachel. Did you ever ask for the money back? At any point in 3 years. Rachel opened her mouth. Closed it. Her face told the whole story. She'd forgotten about it completely. $75,000. She'd been so busy with her career, her house, her perfect life, that she'd forgotten she'd given her beggar sister enough money to change everything. The current valuation, I said quietly, of Mitchell Solutions, based on our last funding assessment, is $11.3 million. Mom actually gasped. As majority shareholder with 68% ownership, that makes my stake worth approximately $7.7 million. I looked at Rachel. Your original $75,000, if we calculate it as an investment rather than a gift, would now be worth roughly $850,000 in company shares. The number hit her like cold water. The room exploded. Cousins started talking over each other. Mom's face cycled through emotions so fast I couldn't track them all: shock, fury, calculation. Rachel just stood there, folder still clutched in her white-knuckled hands. This is fraud, she finally managed. You tricked me. I sent you 5 documented communications over 6 months, I said. You ignored all of them. I was busy. I was working 60-hour weeks at the hospital, buying a house. And I was eating ramen in Brooklyn, teaching myself advanced coding after 12-hour days doing freelance work. My voice stayed level. We were both busy. The difference is, I answered my mail. Mom found her voice. This is family money. You can't just. It wasn't family money, Uncle Frank interrupted. It was Rachel's personal account. From her salary. I checked. Rachel whirled on him. You knew about this? I found out last week, he admitted. She asked me to verify the documentation before tonight. Everything checks out. The transfers, the letters, the corporate filings, it's all legitimate. The estate lawyer was making notes, his professional mask slipping slightly. Ms. Mitchell, do you have the incorporation documents? I handed them over. Filed in New York, 4 years ago. Initial capital investment, $75,000, source documented as personal funds held in trust. Held in trust, Rachel latched onto the words. That means you were supposed to return it. Held temporarily at your request, I corrected. Which became an authorized investment after documented notification and your prolonged silence. One of Mom's friends, a woman in too much jewelry, spoke up. But surely there's some family obligation. There is no family obligation when the family spent years making it clear I wasn't worth investing in. The words came out harder than I intended. Mom cut me off financially the day I chose computer science over medical school. Told me I was on my own. So I was. Mom's face flushed. That's not how. You told me at graduation that you'd only help pay for education you considered legitimate. I pulled out my phone again, found the old email, held it up. Would you like me to read it? She went silent. Rachel tried another angle. Fine. You built a company. Congratulations. But I want my investment returned. With interest. Today. That's not how equity works, the estate lawyer said quietly. If the funds were converted to company shares. They were, I confirmed. You own approximately 7.5% of Mitchell Solutions, Rachel. Based on our last assessment, that's worth $850,000. Her eyes widened slightly. Not quite the reaction I expected. But it's not liquid, I continued. It's equity. If you want it converted to cash, we'd need to go through a formal buyout process, which takes months and requires board approval. Your board, she said bitterly. Our board. Marcus and I control voting majority, yes. Mom sank into the nearest chair, one hand pressed to her forehead. The whole inheritance meeting, her carefully planned moment to publicly exclude me, had detonated in her face. So let me understand this, Rachel's voice shook. You used my money to build a company worth millions, and now you're telling me I can't even access it. I'm telling you it's an asset, not a bank account. Welcome to entrepreneurship. The silence that followed was different than before. Heavier. More final. Because everyone in that room now understood, the beggar had more money than any of them. And she'd built it with the golden child's forgotten cash. I left Newport that night without saying goodbye to anyone except Uncle Frank. You know what's coming, he said at the door, voice low. This won't be the end. He was right. By the next morning, I'd been removed from the family group chat. My cousin texted me a screenshot, 47 messages, all painting me as the villain. Words like manipulated, exploited, and calculated showed up a lot. Mom's version was simple. I'd taken advantage of Rachel during a vulnerable time, twisted a family favor into theft, and built a company on lies. Rachel's version was more detailed. She posted on social media, carefully worded, nothing directly actionable, but the message was clear. Successful doctor betrayed by opportunistic sister. She didn't name me or the company, but anyone who knew us would know exactly what she meant. The comments flooded in. Sympathy. Outrage. People who'd never met me deciding I was a monster. My phone rang. Marcus. Have you seen Rachel's post? He asked. Yeah. Legal wants to send a cease and desist. They're saying it's defamatory. I stared out my apartment window at the Brooklyn street below. Gray sky, people hurrying past with coffee cups and grocery bags. Normal life, continuing like my world wasn't imploding. No, I said. No. A legal letter makes it bigger. Makes it look like we're hiding something. I rubbed my eyes. Let her talk. The documentation speaks for itself. If you're sure. I wasn't. But I was tired. Mom called twice that week. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, first angry, then concerned, finally almost pleading. Each one asked the same question in different ways. Couldn't we work this out as a family? Too late for that, I thought. Should have asked that before you called me a beggar in front of 20 people. Then, on day 6, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. Uncle Frank. You need to hear this, he said. Rachel and your mom held an emergency family meeting yesterday. At your mom's house. I was there. And they're planning to challenge the company formation. Claim undue influence, say you took advantage of Rachel's emotional state, argue she wasn't in the right mind to make financial decisions. My stomach turned cold. She was buying investment property. She was perfectly competent. I know that. You know that. But they're desperate. He paused. There's something else. What? Your dad's brother, my brother Tom, he stood up during the meeting. Told everyone he'd seen the whole thing at Newport. Said you had every receipt, every document, everything above board. I'd barely spoken to Uncle Tom in years. He'd always been quiet at family gatherings, staying out of drama. He told your mother that maybe if she'd treated you like a daughter instead of a disappointment, none of this would have happened. My throat tightened. Then he walked out, Uncle Frank said. Haven't heard from him since. 3 weeks after Newport, reality started hitting Rachel's household. I know this because Uncle Tom called me. Turned out, after he walked out of that family meeting, he decided to keep tabs on how everything was falling apart. Rachel's husband is asking questions, he told me. About where that $75,000 actually went. Dave. I'd met him maybe twice. Quiet guy, worked in finance, let Rachel make most of the decisions. Apparently, Uncle Tom continued, he thought that money went into their Virginia property. Now he's looking at their accounts, trying to figure out why they're short on the mortgage payments. I didn't say anything. She never told him she gave it to you. Of course she hadn't. Because to tell him would mean admitting she'd forgotten about $75,000. That she'd been so dismissive of her struggling sister that she'd handed over that kind of money and never thought about it again. 2 days later, Rachel texted me. First direct contact since Newport. We need to talk. Can you meet for lunch? I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. Why? Please. Just an hour. Against my better judgment, I agreed. A cafe in Manhattan, neutral ground, public enough that she couldn't make a scene. She looked different when she walked in. Tired. Hair pulled back hastily, minimal makeup, none of her usual polish. She ordered black coffee and didn't touch it. Dave wants a divorce, she said. I hadn't expected that. Because of the money. Because I lied about it. Her voice cracked slightly. He found the bank statements. Saw the transfer. Asked me where it went. I tried to explain, but he kept asking why I never mentioned it. Why I never followed up. Why I let you steal from us. She used air quotes on the steal. At least she was being honest about something. I can't give you cash, I said. The company doesn't work that way. I know. She twisted her coffee cup. My lawyer explained equity. But Dave doesn't care about equity. He cares that I gave away $75,000 and forgot about it while he was working overtime to cover our bills. The cafe was busy around us, laptops clicking, conversations humming. Normal people having normal problems. I need you to buy me out, Rachel said finally. Whatever the process is. However long it takes. I need to show Dave that money isn't just gone. That'll take months. Board approval, valuation reviews. I know. She looked directly at me for the first time. I'm not asking as your sister. I'm asking as a shareholder who wants out. There was something almost honest about that. "I'll talk to Marcus and our lawyer," I said. "We'll start the process." She nodded, standing to leave. Then paused. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I didn't think you could do it. Build something real. I didn't think you had it in you." She walked out before I could respond. I sat there for another 20 minutes, coffee going cold, wondering if that was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get. Marcus didn't like it. Why would we buy her out? He paced our office in Brooklyn, hands shoved in his pockets. "She has no legal standing to demand it. The equity is hers, sure, but she can't force a buyout." "I know. So why are we even considering this?" I leaned back in my chair, watching traffic move past the window. "Because keeping her locked into the company means she's always there. Every board decision, every financial report, she's technically entitled to information. Do you want her digging through our business for the next decade?" He stopped pacing. "Fair point." Our lawyer, Christine, had drawn up a proposal. Buy out Rachel's 7.5% at the original valuation, $75,000. Not the current $850,000 it was worth. "She'll never accept that," Marcus said. "Probably not. But it's a starting point." Christine had included terms: a non-disclosure agreement, no admission of wrongdoing, a complete release of any future claims. Clean break, legal closure. I sent the proposal on a Friday. Rachel's response came Monday morning, a 6-page letter from her lawyer, calling the offer insulting and exploitative. They wanted full current value plus 3 years of lost opportunity interest. The number they suggested was over $1 million. "Absolutely not," Marcus said when I showed him. My phone started ringing constantly. Mom, finally getting through, begging me to be reasonable. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly very concerned about family unity. Even my dad called, first time in months, asking if I really wanted to destroy my sister's marriage. "I didn't destroy anything," I told him. "She made choices. I made choices. Now we're living with them." "But you could fix this," he pressed. "You have the money now. You could just write her a check. For $1 million. For fun she gave me voluntarily and forgot about." Silence on the line. "Dad, if I'd asked you for $75,000 7 years ago, would you have given it to me?" More silence. "Then, that's not the point." "That's exactly the point." I hung up. Uncle Tom called that night. "They're planning something," he warned. "Your mom had another meeting. Rachel's lawyer was there. Let me guess. They're going to sue." "Probably. But there's something else." He paused. "Your mom offered to cover the full buyout herself. $1 million, just to make this go away." My chest tightened. Why would she do that? Because it's not about the money anymore. It's about control. If this ends quietly, she can spin the story however she wants. If it goes to court, everything becomes public record. I stared at my apartment ceiling, thinking about the girl who'd eaten ramen for 2 years, who'd taught herself to code in freezing rooms, who'd built something real from nothing. "Tell her no," I said. "You sure?" "Tell her I'll consider Rachel's buyout at fair value, $850,000, but only if Rachel personally acknowledges, in writing, that I acted within my rights." "She'll never do that." "Then I guess we'll see each other in court." 6 months later, Rachel signed. Not for the $1 million her lawyer wanted. Not for the $75,000 we initially offered. We settled at $700,000, below current value, above original investment. The number felt right to Christine, felt fair to Marcus. Felt like closure to me. The paperwork included everything we'd wanted: NDA, release of claims, acknowledgement that all funds were handled appropriately. Rachel's signature at the bottom looked shaky, but it was there. Uncle Tom told me later that her marriage survived. Barely. Dave insisted on couples therapy and separate bank accounts. The Virginia property got sold. They downsized. Mom never apologized. Not directly. But the family group chat I'd been removed from quietly dissolved. A new one formed, smaller, voluntary, no pointed exclusions. I got added. Didn't participate much, but I was there. Mitchell Solutions kept growing. We expanded into Texas, started conversations about international contracts. The Brooklyn office got too small. We moved to a bigger space in Manhattan, kept the old address for the paperwork nostalgia. I still have the same desk though. The one I bought used on Craigslist for $60. Marcus jokes that I should upgrade, get something that matches the new office aesthetic. But this desk built the company. Seems wrong to replace it. On a Tuesday in September, an invitation arrived in my personal email. Not the family chat, not a phone call. A proper digital invitation with a time and address. Small family dinner. Just close relatives. Would love if you could come. Mom. I stared at it for 3 days before responding. Uncle Frank called. You going? I don't know. What's the point? The point, he said carefully, is that some bridges take longer to rebuild than others. You don't have to forgive. You don't have to forget. But you might want to see who shows up. The dinner was at a restaurant in Connecticut. Nothing fancy, no crystal glasses or chandelier lighting. Just a private room, 10 people maximum. When I walked in, Mom stood up. No speech. No grand gesture. Just a quiet, thank you for coming. Rachel was there. We nodded at each other, didn't speak. Dave sat beside her, looking uncomfortable but present. Uncle Tom was there. Uncle Frank. A few cousins who'd stayed neutral during everything. No lawyers. No documents. No agenda. We ate. Made small talk. Nobody mentioned Newport or buyouts or beggar comments. It felt strange and normal at the same time, like learning to walk after a broken leg heals. You remember how, but everything feels slightly off. As I was leaving, Mom caught my arm. I should have believed in you, she said quietly. I should have seen what you were building. Not an apology for what she'd said. Not acknowledgement of the damage done. But something. Yeah, I said. You should have. I drove back to Brooklyn that night, windows down, city lights blurring past. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, client call tomorrow moved to 3 p.m. Also, that Chicago company is interested in Series B. Life, moving forward. Business growing. Bridges half rebuilt, half burned. I thought about Mom's invitation sitting in my inbox. About Rachel's shaky signature. About the girl who'd smiled through humiliation and spent 3 years building power quietly. Would you have gone to that dinner? Would you have cashed out your sister at a loss, knowing what she forgot to remember? Comment below, because family forgiveness isn't math. It's messier than equity and harder than code. And sometimes the only right answer is the one you can live with.